Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Alex Hoffman, and I'm with the Equipment Dealers Association. I'd like to welcome Greg Peterson and Margie Eckelkamp from Machinery Pete, who will be our presenters today. Before we get started, I'm going to run through a couple of housekeeping items. This and other webinars are free services of the Equipment Dealers Association for our dealer members. The Equipment Dealers Association serves its members by advocating in Washington, D.C., and by providing industry relations services such as contract reviews. You should have already received your 2018 membership dues invoice. We encourage you to renew those memberships so we can continue to provide these valuable services. You may have noticed we are running a special promotion right now. If you renew your membership by December 1st, you will receive a free copy of our compensation and benefits report. I know Greg and Margie love interactive webinars, so please ask questions throughout today's presentation. There's a Q&A box in the top left-hand corner of your screen. Just press that button to submit a question, and we will answer it aloud for the group. Finally, the slides for the webinar and recording will be emailed to you following today's presentation, so you can review them later on. Please expect those either late this afternoon or tomorrow morning. Thanks again for joining us, and I'm going to hand it over to Margie and Greg.
Thank you so much, Alex. This is Margie Eckelkamp with Machinery Pete, and on behalf of Greg Peterson and everybody at our team, we are excited to have this webinar today with the Equipment Dealers Association. And Greg, I look forward to talking with you a little bit more about the top trends that you saw not only in the third quarter that we just came out of, but what you're seeing going on right now, and then a little bit of outlook for the future. So Greg, if you would give us a quick background of your used values index and really what you've seen through the third quarter of 2017.
Yeah, no problem, Margie. This this used values index is a quarterly report. I started back early 2011. I'd been getting a lot of inquiries from Wall Street types looking for a big picture synopsis on what was really happening with used farm machinery values. So, excuse me, and I apologize, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, but this graph and the graphs we'll look at coming up, they're all based on the auction sale price data that I've been compiling now. It was 28 years ago this month that I started tracking this stuff, November of '89. So on a quarter by quarter basis, again, my attempt through my lens going back almost 3 decades to give you a look, kind of a thermometer reading on what's happening with used values. Now, you'll notice on the left, it's a 1 to 10 rating scale. It's very simple. And for reference sake, 6.0 is what I considered when I started back in 2011 doing this report. 6.0 is what I considered historically normal or stable used values. Now, talking to you folks, you know there is no normal or stable with used values. But again, going back almost 30 years, tracking the ups and downs, this is my attempt at it. So if you look at the graph here, again, now this is overall. This is taking all the different types of equipment and trying to lump it into one little outlook visual, which, again, pretty difficult when you're comparing garden tractors and combines, but this is my stab at it. And you can look there and see, and this is through the end of the third quarter, so we need to really pay attention to that. This was through September. So now we're halfway into the fourth quarter. But you can see 2017 here, just the last 2 quarters, slight drops, which not unusual at all. Historically, you know, second and third quarter at auction tend to be a little bit softer time on the calendar. You know, you get the crop in the ground, and then we all kind of wait and see how it comes out at harvest. And my take on this, Margie, the slight drop here down to 6.5 on my 1 to 10 scale in third quarter is sort of a continuation of, you know, we might call it the soft bottom that we found with used values here. And if you look at the chart going back to fourth quarter of 15, that's when I started to see, excuse me, leading into early 16, that the used values auction prices were flattening out. Now, obviously, they fell like hell through 13, 14, and most of 15, and that was no fun. But again, since early first quarter 16, we've kind of flattened out, and you can see just a little uptick end of last year fourth quarter, and that surprised me. A little more of an uptick, very early 17, just minimal upticks, and then again, just easing back a little the last 2 quarters.
Yeah, Greg, I know you've used the word footing quite a bit in a lot of your commentary, whether it be on social media or across our Farm Journal media properties, and this really illustrates that footing. Now, if you could give us a little bit more of your historical perspective here on what's happened before in the third quarter, as well as the other key drivers.
Yeah, again, when you look historically, this little teeny drop we saw in the third quarter, which was 0.1 point, is very small for third quarter because, again, if you look at the second bullet point here, over the last 4 years, the average drop in the third quarter has been 0.4 points. So again, to me, to only drop 0.1 was kind of a victory for used values and the used market as a whole. Now, if we get into more of the day-by-day, week-by-week flow, it was really interesting. You'll notice the third point there, in the month of August, if I would have produced this report end of August, Margie, the rating would have been lower. And I think what happened there, there was a lot of talk with the drought and, the folks that had to replant 2-3 times, combination of things. In early August, before that USDA crop report came out, we kind of thought that report was going to be a little more bullish to the market, and it didn't turn out that way. It was kind of a gut punch emotionally, and what I saw, it was immediate. We see these immediate reactions now, farmers in terms of their buying mood at auction and what they pay based on the market, price of corn and beans. So there was a pullback in August, and again, auction prices were softer. My overall rating would have been lower, but as the third quarter went on, in September was a stronger month, and that pulled things up just a little bit.
No, that's great, Greg. And I know one other trend you're seeing, and maybe you can throw a little bit of color on this, and I know we're going to dive deeper into it category by category, but you are seeing more solid buyer demand for even late model equipment.
Yeah, I think, and you're right, something we'll touch on, Margie, and it's that soft bottom overall that we're finding, with sales of new being slower, as this market stretches out now 4 years. We all wish commodity prices would go up, but, folks still have to farm what they got to farm. And I think one of the underlying truths of this footing we found is that in any tough ag market, more of the focus could shift to the used equipment side of things, and then particularly the really good condition used stuff. So, for example, I had a call on yesterday. I don't know if today's Wednesday. It would have been Monday. We do live AgriTalk radio show every Monday for a half hour. So 100 stations. You get people calling in from all over the country to ask questions. And most of the questions are like, "Hey, Pete, what's this thing worth?" or whatever. But a caller on Monday was a younger farmer. I could tell from his voice, and he said, "It's an interesting question." He said, I'm looking to upgrade used machinery, and I'm just wondering." He was looking for a Deere tractor. He said, "Where do you think the best play is, on a 30 series or looking at the R series?" And so we talked about that, and I kind of told him what I thought. R series is a good opportunity to, right now, call your local dealer, some good deals. Obviously, a lot of auctions coming up. But again, to me, what that said, Margie, is the focus is on the really good quality used stuff. So that is, like not falling off a cliff. The average condition stuff, that is weaker. So in essence, if I had 2 index ratings, one for average condition stuff and one for good condition stuff, the good condition index would be a little bit higher and the average condition index would be a little lower. So that's something I'm keeping my eye on. And then the last point, or second to last point here, the local conditions. We saw this end of last year, and we're really starting to see it again now. Some areas that were kind of hit by the drought this year, when auctions are happening there now, the pricing is a little softer. than areas where maybe had some really good yields. And we saw that end of 16 with record soybean yields across many parts of the country, and we saw stronger auction prices there. And I think emotionally, if you had a really good year with yields, even though the price sucks, it makes you feel a little bit more positive about maybe bidding one more time at auction on that good used piece.
Right. And one trend that I think a lot of the folks on this webinar can talk about is their experience with the recent lease return topic.
Yeah, that's something, again, the Wall Street crowd has been on me for a long time, a couple of years now about that, and obviously they're very worried about, oh my gosh, all these things coming off lease, where are they going to go? Is that going to affect the markets? Is that going to slow down new sales? I've been trying to track it as best I can, and it's a couple of ways. One, we watch the auction market. You watch to see if all of a sudden, whoop, here's a sale with 5 late model lease return tractors. Really haven't seen much of that at all, which is a positive thing. The second way we track it, Margie, is just, ground truth, just getting out daily, weekly, talking to dealers all over. And it seems like the concern over the lease returns has ebbed a bit. And it's born out of, especially on the higher end, horsepower end, some pretty good success with dealers being able to hop back in and buying the off-lease tractors in particular and being able to turn them and make a profit. And that's very encouraging. That's a great sign for the market as a whole. A little bit concerned just lately with some of the stack up on the lower horsepower side of off-lease returns, tractors. And that lower horsepower range has been stronger with used values, so we'll have to watch that a little bit to see the absorption rate, if that can pick up and avoid a softening of used values there.
So Greg, we touched on a lot of those key drivers and also, how we are reporting on those trends from our network of auctioneers as well as our network within the dealer channel. And also we want to talk a little bit about some of the data that's informing our analysis, which is available to our dealer subscribers in the Machinery Pete Dealer Center, and that is our search traffic from machinerypete.com.
Yeah, I'm, really excited about this, Margie. The search traffic data as another analytical tool. I mean, I've got 28 years now compiling auction prices, which is, if you're wondering what something is worth, there's no better way than to put it up for sale today, and we all find out. But I think, in looking at the market, and whether it's at the ownership level, sales management, obviously remarketing on the used side, marketing folks, fascinating to look category by category and see quarter over quarter or versus 12 months ago, what's happening. And so again, we talk about footing in the market or this soft landing on used values, soft bottom. To me, it's supported by a lot of this search traffic data at machinerypete.com. So, look at that in the third quarter compared to second quarter, the larger horse tractors, almost a 5% increase. Not huge, but the fact is it's up, it's not down. You can see a little higher increases on the smaller horse tractors. Like we talked, smaller horse, there's more heat on those. Combines, 103% jump. Obviously, there's seasonality in there. Third quarter, guys need to harvest, but still, versus second quarter, that's a pretty doggone big jump. And then on the right, you can see the numbers there comparing third quarter 17 to third quarter 16. And, again, 18.3% increase combine search traffic. Planters, 43.7%. So when that makes sense when I go out and talk to dealers, Margie, around the country when we film for our TV show or U.S. Farm Report, we just ask you guys, what are you seeing? How are these different segments? And quite a number of dealers have referenced the planters. There's been more interest, whether it's upgrading used or buying new. So again, search traffic data is another way to prove that. And again, the auction prices, we'll talk about those, how they've sort of solidified a little bit. But again, I just find the search traffic really insightful. We hope through our dealer center for our Machinery Pete folks, dealers that use our service, that again, throughout your management team, this data is all there and it's updated daily on the fly. So we really hope it can help you make some more informed decisions.
Yeah, always interesting too, Greg, and we'll dive in this category by category to look at the trends comparing the previous quarter, so quarter to quarter, but then also looking a year ago quarters and really see seasonally even some significant interest increasing in some of these categories. So let's start marching through our categories, and let's start with four-wheel drive tractors. What did you see in the third quarter? And then I know we've got some specific examples.
Yeah, kind of that the footing again here. If we look back to the end of 15, Margie, draw a straight line across to the third quarter 17, basically flat. So a little slight drop third quarter, but not really any type of cliff. So again, it was early in the quarter, July and August. We saw a little bit softer auction prices on the four-wheel drives. Excuse me, and then a little stronger to close out the quarter in September.
And let's talk about this example, low hour, late model.
Yeah, this one was really interesting. This was at the end of the quarter. You can see the date on the bottom, September 25th. It was farm auction, Southwest Michigan. We filmed this for our Machinery Pete TV show. Super low hours, my gosh. 578 hours on this 9530. You can see the price point, 175. Now, obviously, if that was on the lot, we'd hope to get more out of it. But the fact is, on the hard cash auction side, I think that's the highest auction price I've seen in 34 months, which we would hope, given those low hours. But actually yesterday, Margie, I was just looking, the average dealer advertised price, just looking in our dealer center, on an 11 model 9530 last year, they made it, I believe, was like, I think, 157,230. Now, that's an average. You can see I note there some of the lower hour asking prices, but again, 175 hard cash wasn't too bad, I thought. And so again, not setting the world on fire, but not falling further.
And here's another example. This one actually highlighting another trend you're seeing, which are tracks are pretty hot.
Yeah, actually, I forget which Farm Journal column I wrote on this topic, Margie, but basically, 2017 year of the tracks to me is what it sort of feels like. So, this 550 quad, 900 plus hours, September, online auction by our friends at Steffes, kind of where I grew up, Western Minnesota, 233. And if this is really interesting. We see this often. Again, it's all about quality and condition. So here you go, a really nice 4-year-old machine, low hours, shows up at this auction, and the price point, okay, boom, 233. So I just do what I've always done. When this data comes in daily, we just compare it to what's happened previously. And if you look back, that's the highest auction price on a 550 quad in 21 months. And that little snippet, I was finding this for the last 6 months quite often, Margie, when the really nice stuff shows up at auction, even a late model big item like this. We were getting the price points, and they would be, second highest in 30 months, first highest in 18 months. So we see that a lot. And again, this one was an online auction. So, it had a little bit, online auctions are closing in on the traditional auctions in terms of pricing, but it depends on the situation. This was an online farm auction, not a straight consignment. But again, 233 was pretty solid, I thought.
So great example of how condition is so decisive in overall values right now. And here's a slightly older machine with pretty low hours, but a little bit of a surprising result.
Hey, yeah, Greg, before you continue, I want to back you guys up just a minute. We had a question about the search traffic data you guys were talking about. The question is, how much of the growth to the search traffic comes from more users to the site?
I don't know, Margie, you want to touch on it first, and then I'll throw in my 2 cents?
Yeah, I can tackle that question for sure, and that's a great question. We are seeing steady growth with our website since its launch just a few years ago, and are proud of the growth there. There is a factor there, and we would say that that's why we're also providing not only the quarter to quarter, but the year over year numbers, and I think that helps color in the picture.
Yeah, and that's right. And again, we're happy with our growth, and appreciate all your guys' support with your listings on our site. We really want to drive our growing farm audience to your listings. But if you look at that search traffic data, even though we've had growth, you find categories in there where you'll see big drops. And again, it's just, driven on what farmers are looking at. So we purposely waited. We waited, I believe it was about 18 months until we launched our new MachineryPete.com site. We waited that long until we had kind of a baseline. And so we continue to grow. But again, we just want to keep tracking this stuff and arm you with it. And so that's kind of how we approach that. But I was really chomping at the bit to get our hands on, and by extension, put this in your hands at the dealership level, the search traffic data. And we'll continue to refine it. I'm excited to take it to the next level, down to the geo level by state. And whether that's on a category level, what's happening with square balers, or, at an individual model level, and start to see and arm you with these search traffic truths, because obviously that affects, as you're trying to value something on trade, but then also on the marketing side, oh my gosh, we're seeing this explosion of search interest from Northern Ohio. Well, maybe you want to market your message into that with our little email messages that are targeted. But so again, excited for what we got and excited for what's coming.
Great. And Alex, please let us know if there's any more questions.
Yeah, that was a great question. And like Alex said at the start, that's what we want this to be. I mean, everything I do and put out content-wise is conversation. That's all I got for style. So talking about the market, that's how we all learn together. Now, this example here I found really interesting. I mentioned before about how August was softer. And again, that's one of the things doing this for 28 years now. It's a day-by-day process. So if the market feels great today, awesome. But next Tuesday, maybe something happens and it's more negative. So we just track it. And again, August was softer. This particular tractor, you can see super low hours for a 16-year-old Deere 9100. And a great auction company, Henslin Auctioneers, on this sale. And you can see the price point, 50. Now, they were hoping quite a bit more than 50. But again, in August, it was just that little back off that we were seeing based, with those USDA crop report. I mean, it was just a back off. And even on an item of 10 to 20-year-old item with low hours, which normally the last 5 years has been a recipe for incredibly hot bidding, again, a little softer here.
So Greg, let's talk a little bit about high horsepower tractors and really row crop configurations here with 200 plus horse.
Yeah, pretty much the same here, Margie, as the four-wheel drive, just a little drop the last 2 quarters. But again, historically expected, and not to the extent that I wouldn't say it affects the footing, which we found since late 15, early 16. Again, I just draw a line across the late 15 on these graphs now. And you can, again, for reference sake, that painful period from second quarter of 13 through into the end of 15, that was the biggest drop in used values I've ever seen, and probably we will ever see. So again, just leveling off since then.
And here we have some search traffic data on this specific category. What are you seeing here, both compared to the previous quarter as well as the previous year?
Yeah, this jives with when I go out, Margie, what farmers are asking me about. And again, so we just looked at the auction price chart, kind of leveling off, holding the last couple of years. But the search traffic data here, again, now this is high horsepower tractors. Teeny, not huge, but small increases versus the previous quarter and versus a year ago. So I think, again, like I said, when I go out and talk to farmers or online all day, 24/7 social media, they're looking. They're looking, for the really high quality used stuff. And I think with these little search traffic bumps, I think that's indicative of that.
And here we have an example of a Versatile coming out of Iowa.
Yeah, this was September 12th. And again, September was a little stronger. Excuse me. Now, this was interesting because north central Iowa, we've seen some softer prices there, Margie, particularly in August, and then when it was just burnt crisp there. But this was an off-brand of Versatile, which I always find interesting at auction, just to see how they hold up. It's a little more variable than the Case IH or the John Deere, but 93,000 on this 11 model with 1,000 hours, that was pretty solid. In fact, if you look, we're comparing back to a similar one, actually with 400 less hours, that brought 90,000 on an auction back in January in Missouri, neighboring state. So again, kind of a solid price point there. I thought 93K.
Another example from Iowa.
Yeah. Now again, the date is, again, is kind of everything. So July and August was a little lighter. This was July 18th. Again, this was in that northern Iowa area, pretty dry. 190, pretty good buy on this one, I thought. 3-year-old 8345R with only 400 hours. Again, you can see we're comparing back a couple similar tractors that, either had higher hours for the same money or brought more money themselves. So again, July and August was a little bit lighter period, and September prices rebounded a little bit.
And what about this example here, Greg?
Well, again, now age of equipment is key. So this is an 09 model 8130. So, and you guys know, but it's always sort of been a truth. You drift towards that 10-year-old point, especially with kind of with all types of used equipment, I guess, but tractors in particular. And then you find a low-hour one like this 8130 with 1,000 hours on it, and it's almost like the Pavlovian experiment where you get the bell rings and the dog salivates. Well, you get something 10-year-old tractor with low hours out there at a farm auction, people want it. So again, here's what I'm seeing: 115K, tied for the highest auction price in 40 months. So again, this is proof of how it's all about condition, hours. And even this one was in northern Iowa in July, which was a tough time and place to sell it, but still the quality of the item drove through for 115.
And let's talk about mid-range horsepower tractors, so 130 to 200 horsepower.
Yeah, just a little different graph here. You guys can see we're not down in the mid-6 range. It's held at a higher level. 8.1, and basically no movement up or down here now, going on, I guess, 2 years solid since end of 15. So I think some of the truths here, they're just, until recently with the off-lease stuff on the lower end here of this horsepower range, there hasn't been the buildup of inventory, and that helps. Price point, more people, different uses. It's all those combination of things that work together to hold the auction pricing higher. So again, keeping it just above 8 on my 1 to 10 scale, Margie.
And here we have about search traffic. So seasonally, compared to second quarter, we saw a pretty decent jump.
Yeah, I found that, again, a good sign for the market as a whole. So 130 to 200 horse tractors third quarter versus second, almost 16% increase in traffic compared back to a year ago. And see here again, here's why I think the data is good to chew on, because we compare back to a year ago, even though we've had significant growth to machinerypete.com, you can see just a smaller increase versus a year ago. Yeah, good jump in the third quarter on search traffic there. And I think, Margie, I lost the screen here. Can you see the screen?
I can. Alex, did we lose the screen share?
I can see it just fine.
Yeah, some reason on my screen, I think it's starting. Yep, appears to be coming back.
Okay, good deal there. So here,
Yep.
Greg, we've got a record auction price on a Case IH coming out of Iowa.
Yeah, a couple things here. Again, we're in the smaller horse category. This was September. Again, September was a little stronger month, but you can see about this 140 horse category, this 5-year-old Maxim 140 with the low hours, obviously 500 hours, $80,000, highest ever auction price on a Maxim 140 sold with a loader. And again, that's what I do day by day when this data comes in. I just compare it. So Maxim 140, 80,000 with a loader, $500. How's it stack up? And again, you can see that's the highest I've seen with a loader.
And here you've got a Kubota example, and we know Kubota's making some investments here in their business for North America.
Yeah, Kubota, I've been noticing for quite a while now on the auction side, when these nice condition Kubotas show up, there's a lot of interest in them, and the price points are solid. So here again, 56K on this M135 GX with low hours, 197 hours, no loader, September 1st, and that was a consignment auction. I found that interesting as well. That's one thing that I think with our search filters is really fascinating. When you look at our auction price data, you can filter by auction type. So you can say, show me all the John Deere S680 combines, but just show me the consignment auction prices or the online or the farm auction. So when we see an auction price trending at the top, like this record price 56K without a loader on this Kubota, and it's on a consignment auction, that's kind of like double proof, the high price point, and then it was on a wholesale auction. And again, I found interesting, Margie, in the third quarter there, end of September, Kubota announced their plans to sink $90 million into their logistics hub for part delivery. So another little, people say, well, why are used values higher with smaller horse tractors? A company investing $90 million into this segment is proof that there's just more happening here, I think.
So continuing to talk about smaller capacity equipment, let's tackle tractors 100 horse and lower.
Yeah, even just a little higher rating here, Margie, 8.3 on my 1 to 10. Again, kind of flat the last 12 to 18 months. I think here, what you have to think about it, who are buying these under 100 horse tractors. So I live in Rochester, Minnesota. Our population, we're adding about, I think it's over 2,000 people a year here with the Mayo Clinic. If you live in a town like this, or Kansas City, Des Moines, Minneapolis, Columbus, you probably have two jobs, husband and wife, maybe each got a raise, somebody got promoted, 401k has been going up like crazy, you got a little acreage on the edge of town. Those folks, whether you're buying new or used, they're just a more bullish buyer. So this is confirmed when we talk to a lot of you guys, when we go down and film for our TV shows. We always talk about different segments, and so many dealers, Margie, have just relayed that, this under 100 horse, under 50 horse has been, a pretty good segment for them the last year.
And let's talk about buyer demand on our search traffic, parsing out 40 to 99 horsepower as well as under 40 horsepower.
Yeah, again, here's the proof. I see what I see at auction, the prices, and again, we count eyeballs at machinerypete.com, clicking on your guys' listing. So 40 to 99 horse, little jump there in the third quarter versus second. And again, now here's what I was talking about, why this data is still valuable. Because a little drop compared to third quarter of last year, not 4.4%, not a huge drop. But if you get even smaller horse, under 40 horse, you can see compared to second quarter and a year ago, both up there. So again, there seems to be a lot of interest in the smaller used tractors.
Oh, excuse me. I think I jumped ahead a bit. We've got an example here, another Kubota example, talking about increased buyer demand.
Yeah, and here, again, when you go into our dealer center at machinerypete.com, this is the kind of stuff that is at your fingertips. So, in the months of July and August, the most clicked subcategory of equipment was, and if you tied it to the make, was under 40 horsepower Kubota tractors. So that's a pretty telling statistic there, I thought. It tells you what they're thinking and what they're clicking on.
So let's talk about combines here, and a slightly small dip in the index rating, but you still say that we're seeing some footing in overall values.
Yeah, again, third quarter, it's just always been the softest time of year, I think, to sell, Maggie. Actually, again, strictly at auction. That's what we're tracking here with this chart. I had someone ask me the other day, I think on the radio show, about time to buy. And I mean, again, if you just look at the pricing over the years, that third quarter, summer, early to late summer is a great time to buy. Of course, we always point them to their local dealer. Obviously, that relationship is huge. The service you get there. I mean, I grew up with that. That's the whole thing. So, but again, combines, auction price is a little dip, but not to the point where I'd really say we're, free fall, Margie.
And some interesting trends here in overall buyer demand. Obviously, again, a strong seasonal pattern compared with second quarter.
Yeah, and this is interesting because when I go around the country, and we can all understand it, when you talk to people, whether it's in person or at an auction or speaking event or just online every day, you definitely feel the pessimism, I guess you'd say. It's like, oh, it stinks, $3 corn. We're all tired of it. But look at this. Even that, with that mindset, you see versus second quarter, 103% increase, which we'd expect a big jump, seasonality. But again, compared to third quarter last year, even up 18%. And this is why I think, we're hitting that, the footing I keep talking about, or the soft bottom. The demand is there to support us from falling further. Now, one interesting thing, I don't know if we'll really tee it up here to talk about it. This might be as good a point as any, Margie, but the one thing I'm really watching now is the number of auctions, because it is going up significantly. It's a big jump, and it's a lot. It's mostly farm auctions, and so there's obviously a lot of different reasons, but equity drain is what I hear, and it applies on kind of both ends age-wise. We've got so many older farmers, and you guys know it. You just see, last couple of years not as fun, and now the guys are older and they're just saying, well, now is the time to sell. Now, this soft bottom we found, or this footing, okay, on these auction prices. If you go straight economic theory 101, supply and demand, we're looking here at a chart that shows you demand is holding up. So then what about the supply side? Now I'm seeing the supply side go up significantly in number of auctions. And a huge percentage of these auctions have late model equipment. So we're just starting, like this week, it's just happening now day by day. We're starting to see the rush of auctions come. So we're tracking this day, day by day. My guess is, looking ahead through the end of the year into January, maybe February, I don't think this increased volume of farm auctions with late model equipment, I don't think it's going to drag down on used values. But again, that's what my gut is telling me. But again, we track this day by day, so we're just going to have to see how this plays out going forward. But it's definitely, kind of the number one thing I'm watching right now, Margie.
Sure, and tell us a little bit about the bidding action that happened at this auction for this gleaner.
Well, again, this was the same sale where that John Deere 9530 brought 175, solid price point. And for perspective, basically everything on this auction sold well. And this is another tool I like in our auction price data, that whenever you're looking at a price on, you punch up an S77 combine, you can click and see everything else that's sold on that auction. And so what was interesting here, Margie, again, was that this was a little bit soft on the soft side, 108 for this nice gleaner S77 with low hours like that. And it looked like it was going to stop under 100, honestly, but it crept up to 108. But gleaners, great machines, but just based on the dealer network, always a little more susceptible to up and down auction pricing. So, a little tough price there when everything else on the sale, basically sold really well, I thought.
Here's a higher price trend-wise from an East Central Illinois auction.
Yeah, again, the date key here, we just drifted into September. So we were, almost a month away from that USDA crop report, kind of absorbed it, dealt with it, no fun. But and here's a really nice 13 model S660. Now, we all know there's a lot of S660s on the market. But again, if you look at my comment here, this is what I'm talking about. When the nicest stuff shows up, this 13 model 404 engine hours, that's like new. You can see that 205, it was the highest auction price on a 13 model in 29 months. That's what I was talking about before, Margie, how it's all about quality. And so even on an item that there's a lot of on the dealer market shows up at auction at a good price point.
And here you've got 2 Case IH examples.
Yep, again, I would draw your attention to the dates these combines sold. And so middle of September, again, a little better. And to me, these prices, low 80s on these two 2377s, about, 10 years old or whatever, both sold with no head, compared to the other 2377s I'd seen the last couple of years, basically right in line, exactly in the range, wholesale at auction, what they've been bringing. So again, that's kind of that footing.
And something we're hearing reported from our dealer friends.
Yeah, this one we've heard about a year now as we travel. And again, this is why I love coming out to see you guys, to film and shine the spotlight on you guys and your business and your history and what you do. And frankly, our audience loves it. They take ownership of you guys and their local dealerships. It's really fun to build out that dynamic. But quite a number of dealers we've talked to have indicated, we always ask them, or Tyne Morgan with U.S. Farm Report, if we're there filming, she'll always say, well, what's been the most surprising thing? 2017. And it unprompted, it's been a number of dealers referencing the volume of combines they've been able to move this year. Not taking them to auction, just, right off the lot, selling them. And a lot of the action is occurring in that, the 5 to 10-year-old models, so like your Deere 70 series. So the volume moving. And again, that's a really positive thing for the market. And, we wish, the price points maybe could be a little bit higher than we were, they're selling for. But the fact that they're moving, again, speaks to the demand is there. And sort of the one truth, it's a hard truth in the market. And I suppose it's always been, but if something is priced right, it'll go. And we see that at auction, and the dealers that, have had good success using our email blast, that kind of stuff, Margie, selectively, offering a price special, and there's attention to it. And I think our first Black Friday sale, I forget when that was. Was that July or August or something?
Yeah, it was late summer.
Yeah. Again, in a kind of a tough time, end of summer, it was our first attempt doing it. We're just trying to create new ways to help you guys move stuff, not to have to take it to auction, basically, which ironic as that might be, being that I've been reporting on auction prices all these years. But again, we want to help you move it closer to the retail number. So we created this Black Friday event, and it was interesting. The feedback, talking to a number of dealers that listed stuff, was again, success rate that they had moving stuff. But the key was it was priced right. And when it's priced right, the farm audience, I don't know why, if they're just, living on the internet all the time, whatever, they're tuned in. Our customers are smart. They react. And so, again, that was another little proof point that buyer demand is holding so far.
Yeah, and we saw some great success for some of our dealer partners in that first cyber sale, and we've got another one where we're accepting dealers into that program right now, and that'll be live right after Thanksgiving. So we can provide some contact information for anyone who might be interested. Just call our Machinery Pete office.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to report on the back end of that. I think, what does that run like? November 27th to December 4th, something like that.
Correct.
It's historically that period, end of November, early December, sort of the top of the market. I always thought, like, if I were a dealer having my own auction, that's sort of when I would hold it. I think the SEMA auction last year here in Southeast Minnesota, that just was knocked it out of the park, 11, 12% above projection, was like the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So I think we're hoping this cyber sale timed at this event can be kind of have the buyers salivating a little bit for these deals.
So Greg, let's transition from combines to grain handling equipment. And here we had a flat index rating.
Yeah, again, you can see it's just been flat all year, 6.8, which, again, historically, I think 6.0 is normal. And that's interesting. The Wall Street people, they're an interesting crowd to talk to. As an investor, you should be focused on long-term truths in any market and what's happening in the conditions. I think, unfortunately, a lot of times our society, we all get focused on the short term. And I think it was Deere came out maybe a year ago. They were talking about the slowdown in sales, kind of the whole market. And I believe they referenced somehow, I don't know the exact wording, but basically like, this is a more normalized market. And they kind of got hammered from the Wall Street people saying, "Oh, what are you talking about?" But I heard that and I thought, well, yeah, that's what our index is showing. 6.8. Yeah, we wish it was 8.5. But again, the fact is it's not dropping farther. I think if you can break these categories apart, Margie, and we talk size of equipment, and basically smaller equals hotter. So in grain handling, gravity wagons have been strong the last few months, and the bigger carts, the high capacity carts, not terrible, but just a little choppier in terms of the auction pricing we see.
And here we have some buyer demand, a good example illustrating some seasonality, but then also year-over-year dip, which is an interesting stat.
Yeah, again, we would expect a jump versus second quarter for this type of equipment coming up on harvest season. But again, numbers are numbers. So a 20% dip versus third quarter last year. I wonder if you could back the slide up one, Margie?
Sure.
I'm just curious, looking into the third quarter. Okay, it's a little bit interesting. Notice if we look at 16, we fell first quarter, we fell second quarter, but then look at third quarter, it leveled. The drop quit. So that is saying auction pricing solidified. And now if you go forward one slide, sorry to make it hop around like this, Margie.
That's okay.
Yeah, look, you could look at that drop 20% and you could say, ooh, 20% drop. Well, part of that is, there's probably a spike in demand last year, third quarter. And that, again, we saw auction pricing, that's when it quit falling. So this is why I love this search traffic data, because whether it's up or down, and whether it's a particular model or a category or whatever, it just tells you it's eyeball count, and it means something. And again, when you compare it with the auction pricing, what I'm finding is a very tight correlation. They're matching up. So here's a little example of that.
Excellent. And here you have some example and a little bit of a trend as far as really a strong trend for grain handling equipment.
Yeah. Again, gravity wagons have been stronger. So if I had an index just for gravity wagons, it would be higher than the grain handling equipment index as a whole. Again, proof is in items like 14.25 for this Brent 744. And again, this was in August, a little bit tricky time, and it was in East Central Iowa. Again, there's the reference highest auction price on a 744 in 36 months. So again, when the nice stuff was popping up, we were still seeing that buyer demand was there.
And Greg, in our last 10 minutes, let's march through our final categories and let's talk about hay and forage equipment.
Yeah, hay and forage down just a teeny bit, but at a pretty decent level, 7.9. We're watching the round baler inventory issue a little bit, but and this is a little tricky here, Margie, because we're lumping in, the hay equipment with forage and the self-propelled forage harvesters. You guys know the wholesale auction market, they're isolated and they're exposed. They've historically always tended to sell a little bit soft, so that drags down a little bit on this category rating.
And let's talk about buyer demand in hay and forage equipment.
Yeah, this again, this one matched up with anecdotally what I hear from farmers, because I get so many farmers reaching out every day. Hey, Pete, I'm looking for this or that. Can you help me? And a lot of it's been hay related. Now, it rained a lot this summer. So again, we saw a jump versus second quarter and versus third quarter a year ago. So again, not surprised that we're seeing auction prices hang in there pretty good.
And here you have a large square baler example.
Yeah, again, size. So smaller equals hotter, and that applies on the hay equipment side too. So these large square balers, sort of like self-propelled forage choppers, they tend to sell a little weak. But 52.25 on this 3-year-old Massey with only 1,460 bales on it. That was an ouch there. But
So
on the
let's
flip
talk.
side of that,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, on the flip side of that, the small square balers that we see, some really solid pricing there through the summer months, Margie.
And let's talk tillage.
Tillage kind of the same as grain handling. It's, just under 7, not bad. I think we're still maybe drifting a little bit lower. Teeny drop in the third quarter. Again, size here. If we broke it down, under 35 foot tillage and then maybe over 45 foot, you'd see a little different readings. The smaller stuff holding up better, more buyer demand for it. But on the positive side, teeny little increase versus third quarter 16. So tillage, one of those categories we'll watch closely throughout the end of the year here, Margie.
Right, a category we've been watching closely, and even to see a 4% increase, could be some evidence to support the trend that tillage may find some footing, and here's a strong auction price coming out of Texas.
Yeah, and location is the key there. You're right, Margie, out of Texas. Again, I've been tracking this stuff almost 30 years, and you guys know geography is what it is in terms of valuations. When you get into the deep south, a piece of used equipment versus, upper Midwest or whatever. But 40,500 on this Landau 6230 like new, that was a very strong price, on the wholesale market. So that was good to see.
Another category that has been challenged over the last several quarters, and one that I know you've been reporting on diligently, would be planting and seeding. Yeah,
reporting digitally also, blogs.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Greg. Cover my flub.
Planters, well, this is a tough one because obviously the age and the size of the planter. So, if you got a 15, 20-year-old, 24-year-old planter, they sell for at auction what they sell for. It's, pretty tough. But, you look at the fourth quarter last year, actually went up a little bit, held through the first quarter. Wondering if we won't maybe see the same this year based on just what I'm hearing from dealers we talk to looking ahead in terms of customers, what they're thinking. And again, our search traffic here compared to a year ago, almost 44% increase, folks looking at used planters. So hopefully that'll be a good sign for the next couple quarters.
We checked these numbers multiple times because I think this is just such a fascinating slide showing, consecutive quarter over year to year and how much difference in time and search traffic there is.
Well, again, we're talking used planters here. And so obviously, second quarter and this year with all the replant,
right.
There was a lot of late action, people searching, needing. But again, third quarter, let's look back to a year ago, and again, that's 44% increase. See, that's jiving with what I'm hearing when we go out to talk to dealers, and they're saying, well, we think our local planter market's a little better. More interested in the new late model used sales have been hanging in there, and it jives with auction pricing on late model used planters. I would say haven't been as terrible as the previous couple of years. So, well, an example here, 16-year-old, 4-year-old, 1770, 2,000 acres like new, again, sold in August. It was a tough time to sell it out of season. And a week and a half after the USDA report came out, but 85,000, at least on the wholesale side, when we compare that, that was pretty solid.
So, Greg, we are nearing our final slides here, and I'd just like to remind our participants we are happy to take your questions. Go ahead and submit those now, and we will be sure to have a few minutes at the end to get those answered. And Greg, let's talk about self-propelled sprayers, and then we'll get a little bit into your outlook.
Yeah, sprayers have been kind of the biggest jump in 2017, Margie. And now we were starting from a lower level, self-propelled sprayers under 6, but now we've climbed up into the mid-6 range. And again, this is the beauty of the auction price data. It's why I started 28 years ago this month doing this, because I was son of a third generation dealer, and it's like every piece on your lot, if I got to sell this today, what's it worth? Well, that changes. That's why you can't put an algorithm on used values and say this thing is going to drop 2% this year. To do that, I just think it's stupid, because a piece of used equipment, there's so many factors into what it's worth. You can look at these self-propelled sprayers. They've increased used values in the last year. Now, does that make sense? I don't know. I just know what is. And we go around the country and we're seeing stronger pricing. So, and we see it with search traffic. Again, that matching up. If you look third quarter versus last year, 51% increase. Again, the last year, this has kind of been the year of the sprayer coming back. Now, we're only, again, at 6.4 on my 1 to 10 scale. We're not up in the mid-8 range, but, again, talking to dealers, the success on the new sales side has been strong. And I'd leave you with this one. This was a Miller Nitro 5300 on that Michigan auction, end of September. Now, I stood there, I took that picture, standing there, we filmed it. It brushed 230, what it sold for. And I talked to the guy who bought it, local farmer. It was interesting. I said, well, congratulations on your sprayer. And then I just let him talk. And he just told me what he's been doing. He said, I've been looking for the nicest used one I could find. I've been looking for a long time. And, excuse me. And he said, this fits the bill. I'm really happy. And 227, again, on the wholesale side, that was a little bit higher than I thought it was going to bring, put it that way.
No, great, Greg. And here, time, guys, to submit your final questions, and we'll transition to that. Greg, if you would give us a little bit of your outlook and maybe even adjust it from what you were saying at the end of third quarter for how things may end in 2017.
Right. Now, this little look ahead here, this is for the Wall Street crowd, because they always ask me, okay, what just happened? That's great. What's coming up? And I always qualify it and say, I'm not a magician. But I can tell you what I think based on all the stuff that we do, the data, conversations, anecdotal. We talk to farmers all the time, solid 24/7. So this is what I thought at the end of third quarter, if you look from my projections. Part of this, we bled a little bit lower in third quarter, but again, I said that little drop was actually a win. Fourth quarter tends to be a stronger period. I think we had a stretch of like 11 years in a row, Margie, in our index, where the overall index went up in the fourth quarter. Now, it used to be that was section 179 motivation. Less so when there's no dough. But it's funny, even though there's less money, it's almost like a psychology thing where we've had a decade of that mindset. And so some of that bleeds through. So my thought was we would hold pretty much sprayers, we positive momentum there. To give this a little bit of an update into the fourth quarter, as I look through the list here, I would say maybe the 130 to 200 and 100 and under, maybe a tidge lighter. But again, middle of November, we're just starting on the really go time here, the last 6 weeks of the year. So the proof will be in the pudding in the weeks to come.
Interesting, Greg. Thank you so much. And Alex, I believe we have one question that's come in, maybe more.
Yep. First question is, do you have any specifics on self-propelled forage harvesters? Where do you see this segment going?
Well, we do. I've always tracked that. And again, that self-propelled forage harvester segment at auction is always felt to me just kind of exposed. So, here's this class 2-year-old Jaguar up for sale, and because they don't show up every day, what they sell for at auction, we tend to perceive it as like, ouch. Now, I guess what I would say the last 6 months is that the ones we've seen sold, drifting a little bit lower, not dropping a ton, just kind of that same second and third quarter drip lower. As to where we're headed, I think I would say my optimistic guess would be kind of holding. I think we can do that through the fourth quarter on these things. maybe in the early first quarter. But again, it's hard. They're tough when they show up at auction. So it's we need to get a little more clarity there from our dealers who are running some specials on the late model ones. They're trying to move out and see the success rate on that. So again, I think it's a little challenged market, but kind of holding overall.
I am going to go ahead, Greg. I'm going to try to do something live. If everyone can be just 5 more seconds patient. I was even going to compare October 2017 to October 2016, and it looks like we saw a 75, almost 76% increase in search traffic to self-propelled forage harvesters. So let me.
Well, see, that's beautiful, Margie. That's the kind of stuff, in this dealer center, this search traffic data. Again, because what we want to do here is arm you guys with real numbers to make decisions. So what I just referenced, and I qualified that and said, you don't see many of them sold at auction. But again, quite a number of listings for sale at machinerypete.com. And again, we're tracking who clicks on them. So if that's true, if that's a 70-75% jump, I mean that's a real positive thing. So that should impact, if you're looking at taking one in on trade, how much you want to give for it, that your finger on the pulse on buyer demand. Is it there or is it not? And that's what we want this data to be.
And then just real quickly, actually comparing third quarter 2017 to third quarter 2016, over 100% increase in searches. So some great stats there.
See that? So again, armed with that information, I would maybe change my answer, which was based on what we see on the auction side of holding to up slightly. Again, because what I've seen, particularly the last year as I track this, how the search traffic data matches up to the auction price data is when we see those spikes on the search traffic side, like we saw with self-propelled sprayers. I haven't seen a case where they've been going the opposite direction. So search traffic spiking up and auction prices tanking. I haven't seen that yet. And I mean, in theory, I didn't think we would see it, but I was always guessing. And what we're trying to do with these analytics are take away the guessing from this. I mean, this business is an awesome business. The margins in this business, I try to tell that to the Wall Street people we talk to. I'm like, you guys, you don't have any idea on the business here, the farm equipment business at the dealer level. And smart ones try to get out and talk to you guys and get a handle on it. But, those margins. So if we can help you, make a decision based on some real numbers. And thank you for pulling those traffic numbers out on the self-propelled forage choppers, Margie. That's great stuff.
Well, I think there's 2 takeaways that we want to prove to dealers, and we want to prove, there's value in the data. We want to make it transparent, accessible, and we're going to report it as is. That's the journalistic roots, both in Machinery Pete as well as our partner at Farm Journal Media. And Greg, I think that's it as far as questions, and I want to thank you so much for helping provide some of your analysis to this audience today. And Alex, I'll throw it back to you for any other conclusion.
Just thank you guys so much. Appreciate our partnership with Machinery Pete and the webinars you've provided for us this year. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day, good weekend, good Thanksgiving, and we'll be back soon.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.